Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope you had an amazing day so far. I hope you were able to attend the class last night. If you weren't able to, I highly suggest you watch it. I think that my wife put down as the title, the most important decision you'll make in your life. And the reason why I said that was not to be dramatic, but it was because Rabbi Nachman held that it was. So if you didn't get a chance to watch it live, you should watch it after. And hopefully it'll help you to come to some clarity in your life about a very important sugya, very important.
All right, Rabbi, good morning. What's the title of the last night's class?
It's gonna be put up. It's the new class that Benny's gonna send out today, Bezrat Hashem. So when you check on the WhatsApp groups, you're gonna see a new class that's sent out. And I think it's gonna be the most important decision of your life. I think that's what she called it. So just look out for it, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome, Daniel. Okay. Now, we have a good one today. You ready? Va'alken ikar tikun hashena b'kedusha. What's the essence of sleeping? What's the essence of the rectification from falling asleep? How do we experience this thing which Rabbi Nachman says is the cause of all suffering? That he says explicitly in Likutey, which is really not his chidush. It's pretty mashma if you look hard enough in Chazal, in multiple different Gemaras, where our sages thousands of years ago told us that a person who has da'at, he has everything. A person who doesn't have da'at, he has nothing. A person who has daya in his generation, it's like he created the Beit HaMikdash himself. If he doesn't, it's like he destroyed it. And many more sayings of this nature. But then Rabbi Nachman comes out, like is often the case, to just shoot the truth in the face and to say that all suffering that a person goes through in his life, whether it's personal or collective, whether it's familial, whether it's societal, whether it is internal or external, whether it is physical or emotional or psychological or spiritual, it is all due to a chesron in da'at, to a lack of da'at. And that when da'at is present, suffering goes away. And to the degree that there's da'at in a person's life or in a community's life, to that degree, suffering is extinguished. And da'at, again, like we spoke about last night, doesn't just mean knowledge, even though it's how they translate into English. Da'at is an intimate knowledge. It's a knowing which is so deep, it's so intense, it's so real that you are one with the thing that you know. And now we can understand, because prior to this, how is it that me knowing that Hashem is there, that he runs the world, that he's the cause of the things that takes place in my life, that even if everything that he does is because he loves me, it's to bring me closer to him, like we speak about so often, which was the beautiful explanation that Rabbi Arush put together in a very simple format to explain really what Emunah is according to Rabbi Nachman. So with all that being said, I might know all of those things and I'm still suffering. So how can we have such a clear contradiction to something that Rabbi Nachman said emphatically in so many different ways? And what our sages said in so many different ways? And the answer is that da'at is not some superficial external knowledge. Like for instance, the fact that you heard that your sibling bought a house. According to the Torah, that's not da'at. That's a piece of information. It might be a piece of information which you're interested in, but da'at is knowledge which has so much infused your mind, your heart, your soul, your body, your existence, that there is no difference anymore between you and what you know, that you're one with it. And the proof that we have comes from the statement of our sages, who point out that the very first time that you hear something in the Torah is its essence. We know the first time that da'at is used in a verb form is to say that Adam yada et Chava, that Adam knew Chava, meaning that he had sexual intimacy with her. And we know that that's the most physical, intimate act. And in the course of the act itself, at the highest level, in holiness and in purity, then you become one with your partner. To the extent it's not anymore about Adam versus Chava, but they're both called Adam at that point, because they're one. So Rabbi Nachman comes to explain something very deep, that the things that you know, you also become one with. When you've internalized them in your heart, when they become a part of your essence, a part of your being, to the extent that you are that knowledge now. And this was the goal of Rabbi Nachman, to Makayim, what the prophet says about the future, that the Geula is going to happen when the knowledge of Hashem, that he's above and he's below and there's nothing else beside him, that this has been known to you and entered into your heart. Because this is the ikar of knowledge, according to the Torah. When the intimacy of the knowledge has become bound up with your heart, that it becomes your living, walking, active consciousness. That, like, for instance, just an example, me. Then my whole life I was a self-proclaimed atheist. That I said I didn't believe in God. That I felt that religion was the cause of all the suffering in the world. That my whole entire orientation to life was revolving around evolutionary theory and science and teva, nature, and logic and proof. And whatever the five senses can feel, and if not, it's nonsense. And it's a cause of destruction in the world. And because of that, which I didn't realize at the time, that I found out later from Rabbi Nachman, that the reason I had so many depressive episodes in my life, that I don't have enough fingertips or toes to count them. And the reason why I was on so many psych meds, and the reason why I had to see so many therapists, is not because I have a genetic disorder, or even because I have a genetic vulnerability, as science and research would prove probably to bear out is correct, but actually because Rabbi Nachman says that as soon as a Jew believes only in teva, in nature, the automatic outflow of that is that he's going to become depressed. Because the chiyut, the life force of a Jew, is Emunah. And this is not to say, like a secular person might think, like I thought, that faith itself is beneficial to a person only because it allows him to deal with his problems in his life and to feel that he's not out of control, when really he is out of control and everything is not good. But Rabbi Nachman is coming to tell you, no, faith is a Jew's chiyut. It's his life force. Just like we breathe physically, and in that way we're able to live. And if we couldn't breathe, we would die. So too, you have a spiritual life force. And that life force is even more primary in some ways than your physical life force. So what is that air called? It's called Emunah, faith. That faith in Hashem is not some ancillary thing. It's not, oh, it would be nice if I could have such a thing. But it is the very life force of a Jew. And he's not saying it as a way of trying to pound the table for Judaism. He was not even a person who spoke about religion, da'at. He was a truth seeker. He was a soul searcher. He was not a customary, traditional learner of Torah. He was not a traditional teacher of Torah. He didn't have traditional students. His path was the path of truth, and wherever it was, that's where he went. And that truth in the end of the day is called Emunah. And that according to Kabbalah, that the highest level of the soul has 3 heads, which is called the Keter. Those 3 heads, according to Kabbalah, at the lowest one is called Ratzon, which we usually associate with Keter. The one above Ratzon, which is still a part of the Keter, the crown of the soul, which is the highest part of existence, which in the universe is referred to as the Or Ein Sof, the light of the Ein Sof, the light of the endless one, which is infinite. So we see already that Ratzon of a Jew is infinite. And that's the reason why it's the most powerful tool that we have, is what you want. And that's why Rabbi Nachman says that what you want, you will do, and what you don't want, you won't do. That's how free will works. He was trying to explain something very deep about your soul as well. And that's why we see many people have done heroic deeds and actions, even for instance, just practically, that somebody can pick up a car if his life depends on it, where even if you worked out for 100 years, he would never be able to pick up a car. But if he needs to, and he thinks his life depends on it, and he wants it enough, he can lift up the car. And there's many, many feats like this, many unbelievable things that people have done. And all the more so that a spiritual ratzon can guide you to things that you can't possibly imagine. Ratzon. Higher than that is something called ta'anug, something called oneg, ecstasy, pleasure, delight. And this pleasure, this ecstasy is not physical. It doesn't come with pills on it, with smiley faces. It's actually deriving from one of the highest points of your own soul, a point that's almost unfathomable, a point in which we will be receiving again, Bezrat Hashem, with the time of the coming of the Mashiach, one in which we received at Har Sinai, but all of those levels were given over to Moshe. We have a little taste of this on Shabbat, and that's why the mitzvah is Oneg Shabbat. And we know that the Oneg on Shabbat is coming from the Shabbat itself, that if a person really tastes the Shabbat, he can feel that ecstasy, and it's natural and it's spiritual. And this is even higher than Ratzon. But the highest part of the Keter, the crown, the Ein Sof, is something called Raza de Hemnuta, the secret of Emunah. That this is the highest level of the Keter. That the highest level of existence, which they call the unknowable head, is referring to Emunah. That it's so deep, it's so all-encompassing, it's so transformative. It is the origin of all of these things that we experience in our life. It's the origin of our ratzon. It's the origin of pleasure or ecstasy. And that is Emunah. And because it is the origin of everything, it is the life force of everything. And this is the reason why I was depressed so often in my life. And this is the reason why I saw so many therapists, because I didn't have life force. Like Rabbi Nachman says, what did you learn by me? When people ask you, what were you doing in Breslov, learning by this Rabbi Nachman? Tell them Ruach. Like Techiyat HaMeitim. I was dead and now I'm alive. I was sleeping and now I'm awake. I was sad and now I'm happy. And now we have the answer. What's the essence of the tikkun, the rectification for spiritual sleep? Hu al yedei Emunah. It's only through Emunah. Simple Emunah Pashuta. Like the way in which a Jewish woman or child, Rabbi Nachman says, believes in Hashem before the world has jaded their perception of life, before they have been manipulated and hurt and traumatized. But that simple faith that a Jewish woman or child has prior to all of that, that he knows Hashem exists, that he believes Hashem exists, that he knows everything is from him, that he's excited to be his son, that he's excited to be alive, that he's excited for what's going to come today, because he doesn't know what it is and anything is possible. And I'm not constantly worried about what people think about me, what people feel about me, what's going on in my life. I'm just curious. I'm just running after things that I'm interested in, new opportunities, new possibilities. Kemuva b'divrei Rabbeinu Zal, like our Rebbe in Likutey Moran says in Lamed Hey, Ot Gimel, Hainu, meaning b'sha'at histakut da'at, meaning in the time which Hashem, Rabbi Nachman says, takes away your da'at. Because what's the cause in which that my intimate felt experience that Hashem is causing the events in my life, that he's doing it because he loves me and in order to draw me closer to him? That da'at, that consciousness, Hashem is hiding from me. Why is he doing that? Because it's time to sleep. Bechinat Sheina. This is the time of sleep. And sleep is important, Rabbi Nachman says. Meaning, when a person sees that his da'at is confused, he is not in a state of wholeness, of knowing with intimate knowledge that Hashem is the orchestrator of his life, the conductor of his life, the life force of his life, the ultimate reality and cause of his all the things that take place in his life. It's not in shleimut right now. It's not whole right now. He's not feeling so great. He's not feeling so whole. He's having an off day. He's not feeling the love. He's not able to know and to understand that everything is b'hashgacha Hashem Yitbarach only. He might know even 99%, Rav Natan is saying. He might really think 99% that Hashem is causing everything, it's coming from love. But I have this one little aching feeling in my heart. I have this one little negative thought in my mind that's driving me crazy, making me feel like maybe it's not. And maybe things are really bad. And maybe things are really out of control. And maybe I'm a mess. And maybe I'm a loser. And maybe my life is falling apart. And maybe I never really figured it out. And you spiral out because of the 1% that makes you crazy. Your da'at's not whole. All you need is that one little thought, that one little feeling. Like Rav Natan says, we see now that the majority of Jewish people are not in the land of Israel. We're outside of the land. We're living amongst the secular world. And therefore, because they go only according to Teva, they go completely bli Emunah, bli da'at. That all of their chiyut and all of their life force is not one of Emunah, but it's one of Teva, it's one of nature, that's their actual life force. And that's why science is so enthralling for them. And why for them it's enough. And they don't go into depression necessarily because they don't have Emunah. That they could literally just believe in science and nature and they could feel okay because it's their life force. But for a Jew, it's now Laila, it's Choshech, it's darkness, it's nighttime now. That the wisdom of nature, of science, of logic, of cause and effect, of A plus B equals C only, and that could never change. Chas v'shalom, Rav Natan says. Azay mechuyav kol echad meYisrael shich lahashlich u'salek dato legamrei u'yitchazek et atzmo be'emunah levad. And this is one of the great chidushim of Rabbi Nachman, that on paper, if you just read this alone, you might think to yourself that he is advocating for ignorance, which many people have jumped to that conclusion, and it's only because they have not read the other teachings of Rabbi Nachman, which make it very clear that he was a very big fan of not being ignorant, and he actually encouraged, in the deepest, most authentic, genuine possible, the pursuit of da'at. However, Rabbi Nachman is bringing up something which is a fact Kabbalistically. It is a fact according to the way that Hashem created the world, that there are times when Hashem is revealing himself to you, and that's clear, and there are times in which he hides himself from you. And Rabbi Nachman says, let's not live in the dark, and let's not be ignorant. Because if we think that we can live the same way in every moment, regardless of how we're feeling or we're thinking, then you're being ignorant yourself. We need to be able to have different modes of operation. We need to be able to have different weapons of war. We need to have different ways to approach the circumstances and challenges and time spans in my life, the tekufas of my life. So what does Rabbi Nachman say to do when all of a sudden the chokhmah of Teva, nature, has gripped your heart? That you feel right now that things are the way they are for horrible reasons that are out of your control, that it's not for the best, that it can't change, that you now should go into Yeush and despair because of that? Rabbi Nachman says, and Rav Natan brings down, Azay mechuyev. Now it's a mitzvah. Now, if you don't, you're doing kivyachol, so to speak, an avera. if you don't do what I'm about to say right now, it's mechuyev, it's incumbent upon you, kol echad Yisrael hashlich usalig dato legamri, that you throw away everything you know completely. Vitchazek et atzmo be'emunah levad, and that you strengthen yourself in emunah alone. La'amin be'emunah shlema, that you believe with emunah shlema, she'akol ba'hashgacha levad, that you believe with emunah shlema, with complete faith, simple faith, that everything is Hashem's hashgacha alone, but only through faith and not through knowing. Ve'en shum teva ba'olam klal. And Reb Natan says in the same language as his Rebbe, which is fascinating. And it's not by chance. It's because Reb Natan is telling you something very deep here. That what I'm saying to you right now, Reb Natan Zal, is the ikar and the essence of why Rabbi Nachman had to say what he had to say. That Rabbeinu sha'ag b'kol gadol. That Rabbeinu screamed in a loud voice, with tuberculosis, with pain in his body, writhing in suffering, blood which was pouring out of his throat because of his illness, sick, living with a disease which many people had died from in a much shorter time, which he lived 3 years longer than most people did with the same disease that his own wife had passed from. And he looked at his students, and you can imagine the fire in which he said it when you just see his students 200 years later, who don't know the Rebbe in the way that his students knew him, who don't know the Rebbe in the way that he knew himself, that he was the origin of this Emunah, so to speak. That he looked at his students with fiery eyes, with a screaming heart, and his students described Rabbeinu sha'ag b'kol gadol. Rabbeinu screamed, he roared in a loud voice, almost to the extent that he shocked them, that they were scared, that they were in fear, that they were terrified, how he was saying this. And he screamed, Ein shum yeyosh ba'olam klal. There's no such thing as despair in the world at all. It doesn't exist. He screamed it. Why does he have to scream that? Why does he have to roar like a lion? Because you think that there is. Because everything in your life is going to tell you that there is. That you have every reason to despair in the world. That your life is never going to get better. That you are in Gehenna, you're in hell, you're in emotional hell, you're in physical hell, you're in financial hell, you're in Shalom Bayit hell, you're in children don't listen to you hell. You're in every type of pit in the world. And you're never going to get out. So you need the Rebbe to scream to you. I went there first. I know it firsthand. And I'm coming out and I'm telling you right now, Ein shum yeyosh ba'olam klal. There's no such thing as despair in the world at all. Now Rav Natan uses the same exact language. And he says, Ein shum yeyosh teva ba'olam klal. There's no such thing as nature in the world at all. It's all hashgacha pratit. Because what's the cause of despair? What's the cause of yeyosh, Rabbi Nachman says? Bli Emunah, there's no Emunah. Why? Because you have internalized teva, that you believe in nature, that a Jew believes that there's only such a thing as cause and effect, as laws of nature. And as a result of that, he is in despair. Because if my genetic history is right, and my father deals with depression, and my grandfather deals with depression, and my great-grandfather deals with depression, so I have to. If I was traumatized as a child, and we know that what is the normal repercussions of that for people who have been through that thing, I'm also done. That if I was sexually abused as a child, and we know the majority of people who are sexually abused, they end up sexually abusing others. So I have no control. I'm going to end up doing it also. That if I have every socioeconomic issue working against me, that I am a oppressed, marginalized group in America or in society. And on top of that, my parents are divorced. And on top of that, my parents were abusive and drug addicts. And on top of that, I grew up in the hood. And the list goes on and on. According to the social workers, you have every vulnerability in the world. So what are the chances you're going to succeed? How are you ever going to get out of there? How are you not going to be a statistic? The answer is only if you believe you won't be. And that's why Rabbi Nachman is pounding the table and screaming at you. Ein shum yeush ba'olam klal. No matter what all of these things are, they exist only at the very lowest realm of reality. At the bottom, at the footstool of Hashem's feet, so to speak. And above that, for infinite levels, is Hashem's hashgacha pratit. And when Hashem wants, he can just lift his feet up off that footstool and choose to do something different. Choose to do something you can't possibly imagine. And this is what got me out of the psych ward. And if not for Rabbeinu screaming that there's no Yeush in the world at all, that there's no Teva, there's no nature in the world at all, there is no way I would be alive right now. There's no way I'd be a functional human being right now. There's no way I would be able to have, Baruch Hashem, a stable family. There's no way I would be able to hold down, Baruch Hashem, a stable job. There's no way I would be able to create a nonprofit organization where I'm trying to teach everybody about hope and about faith and about purpose and about truth and about commitment and self-sacrifice and devotion and never giving up. If Rabbeinu didn't scream with a loud voice that there's no such thing as despair in the world at all. Because when a Jew believes that no matter where he is, no matter what pit of hell that he's fallen to, no matter what damage has been done to him, and he's constantly and currently going through, Hashem can change everything in one moment. And when you believe that, you get to experience it. But the only way to believe that, Rabbi Nachman says, Rav Natan says, stop believing in Teva. Stop believing in nature. Because the belief in nature itself is what's causing your despair. The belief in circumstances as being more powerful than your soul is what's causing your despair. That we see certain people that they can't get off substances for years or maybe their whole life. And a person, all of a sudden, he has an awakening and he believes in God. And he goes off cold turkey. How do you do that? And they said, I don't know. And by the way, lest you think that I have no relationship to this anymore because it's been years since then. Every single Jew is constantly going through this process of losing your da'at and getting it back. And every time that you are growing from level to level to level, you have to lose your da'at. Because when you get to the next level, you need to kick into Emunah. Because that's the only way to break through to a higher place. So I'm still going through this all the time. Honestly, last week, I felt that I had a breakthrough. I mamish felt that I had reached like a new height for myself personally in terms of connection to Hashem, in terms of Emunah, in terms of Avoda. And then I don't know what happened to me. Friday, I felt horrible. I literally woke up and I felt like I had no da'at. Like it just left me. But because I have been learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings for years now, and because I talk to Hashem for at least an hour a day for years now, which is now at least 1,000 hours, at this point, thousands of hours of talking to Hashem. Because I do my best to fulfill all of the wisdom of Rabbi Nachman, because I don't learn secular wisdom anymore. So now when the time comes and that thing happens to me, and it's scary still, even then, but I knew what to do right away. I'm going to kick completely into Emunah. I'm going to throw my da'at away completely. I'm not going to think about how this makes sense. How could it be that one day ago I was like this and now I'm like this? Was all of that fake? Was all of that not real? Did I not really achieve those things? Did I not really experience those things? And this is what the Yetzer Hara is going to make you feel. It's what's going to make you think. And when you engage in that war of believing that, that's your demise. Comes Rabbi Nachman to say, and you would never know this otherwise. No, you're actually reached a new level. What should you do? Go to Hashem like a little child who doesn't know anything and throw yourself on him completely. So what did I do? I went to my car. That was the only place I had privacy. I think it was raining. And I started by thanking Hashem for the smallest things again. Going back to the very beginning, that I had parents. That my mother, despite the fact that she had scarlet fever as a child, she survived. That my mother is the final child of a Holocaust survivor, whose whole family was killed in the camps, and he was the only one who survived. The fact that I'm here itself is a miracle. That my father met my mother. That my grandmother survived scarlet fever as a child. That it also looked like she wasn't going to make it. That I was the final child of my parents. And that even though I grew up in a completely secular family for generations, Hashem opened my eyes to the fact that he exists. And if you go back deep enough, everyone has many, many miracles, but they're covered over by so much darkness. They're covered over by such a concealment of da'at. So I went back to the beginning like a child, and I went over each one and I said it out loud. And obviously the basics, like we always speak about, that I could see, that I could hear, that I could smell, that I could taste. But to really dig deep for that azamra, for that nekuda tova, for those good points, until I started to feel a little bit of simcha. And then I begged Hashem to help me. I begged him, as if I didn't know him at all. As if I never tasted it at all. As if I never knew that Hashem loved me. As if I never knew that Hashem wanted the best for me. Even though I just knew that so much yesterday, more than maybe I ever did. And then Baruch Hashem, because of that process, and because Hashem had rachamim on me, and because I have the greatest Rebbe in the world, and everything he says works, the next day, thank God, where it would have been, maybe I would have went into the beginning of a spiraling out for the next week or weeks or months, that bout of da'at being taken from me was for one day or half a day. And all of a sudden, I kick into a higher level of da'at after that. And this is not special for me. This is me just being very, very, very committed to living with the Rebbe's teachings, even when they don't make sense to me, even when I don't understand. But this is the whole ikar. This is the whole blessing of the Rebbe, that he has been to hell, and he went up to Gan Eden, and he went through the whole thing. And like he told his students, that I don't know why you guys are all crying. I'm going first. You have nothing to worry about. And he didn't just mean I'm going first, meaning I'm leaving this world. It means I went first through all of this. And I'm telling you what to do. And this is the essence of the rectification of sleep, meaning that your consciousness has been taken from you. Your clarity that Hashem loves you, cares about you, wants the best for you, has been removed from you. That he's the one who's causing the events in your life. He's not just allowing them to happen. It's hidden. The tikkun for this is to throw your knowledge away completely and to kick into Emunah. Hainu b'she'at sheina, meaning it's specifically at the time of sleep. That you need to enter within to the realm of Emunah. Lismoch al Emunah levad, that you need to rely on Emunah only. From after that you threw away whatever you knew. Like now that we're in exile, that we need always to throw away what we know for Emunah only. Because we're always having our da'at taken from us, because we're in exile. We're in exile spiritually, we're in exile physically. From afterwards still, that's not revealed to the person's da'at completely, to know be'emet in truth, that everything is Hashem's hashkacha, that he's the one who's supervising and orchestrating everything that takes place in your life. Therefore needs to throw away what he knows and to rely on Emunah only. Bichinat, in the concept of, like it says in Tehillim, Tzadi Bet, Ve'emunat beleilot. And your emunah is in the nights. Which he's saying is that David HaMelech, that David Malka Mashiach, the Mashiach Zikenu David, is telling us that when nighttime comes, meaning sleep, that my da'at has been taken from me, which is the concept of nighttime. Be'emunah techa beleilot. It's time for emunah. That it's not some hashtag that you put in a Twitter account. It's not some bumper sticker I put on my car. Like Rabbi Nachman says, emunah is active. It's not passive. Emunah doesn't mean everything is from Hashem. Emunah means I go to talk to Hashem and I scream to him for an hour and I cry to him for help. Emunah is the act of speaking to Hashem, Rabbi Nachman says. It is not a vague belief in God. And it's the act of speaking to him in those difficulties, in those trials, that is the tikkun, that is the rectification for the nighttime, for the concealment. And because that in nighttime is the time of sleep, histalkud the da'at, that's the time when you need to throw away your da'at. Mitgaberet chokhmat teva. But now that it's nighttime, and now that your da'at is removed from you, now that you don't intimately know that everything is from Hashem, so now you're vulnerable, because now the forces of nature are even stronger. Or in the language of Kabbalah, the Sitra Achra is now in full force. Chas v'shalom. Shehu b'chinat choshech. It's nighttime for you now. It's darkness. B'china, like it says in Bereshit. B'tardei manafla al Avram. That a deep sleep fell on Avram. V'nei ema chashecha. And behold, a fear of the darkness fell on him. Shira'u tokefa galut. That it says in the Midrash, what was it that fell on him? The entire galut of the Jewish people. That the exile of the Jewish people that would take place for us until the Mashiach was going to come. It all fell on Avram. That he felt the weight of it from the beginning until the end. And for that, a tremendous fear and trepidation came down on Avram when he thought about his children and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren, and how long this would be and how painful it would be. Meaning at the time of sleep, at the time of tardema, at the time of a very, very deep, deep, deep sleep. When Hashem is removed from you, your knowledge of him at all, not intellectual, not just emotional, intimate. That is when the strength of the exile kicks in. And that's when the forces of nature, they nourish and they draw energy and they draw koach, they draw life force. They draw it all from you, from your beliefs. Because Rabbi Nachman's chiddush is, where does nature get its life force from? What do you mean? Hashem created nature. Rabbi Nachman says it's true. But do you want to know where nature gets its power from? Something very deep. It gets its power from Jewish belief in it. To the degree Rabbi Nachman says that the Jews believe in nature, and Rav Natan brings this down Likutey Halachot, to that degree nature is strong in your life. Teva is strong. Science becomes the all power. And this is like the Zohar teaches, that in the time of sleep, the forces of the Sitra Achra, they rest on a person while he's sleeping, meaning to say that spiritually, when a person, it's been concealed from him, that Hashem is not with him right now. He doesn't feel that. He doesn't feel the love. He doesn't feel connected. He doesn't feel hope. That once the Jew now starts to believe in nature, it starts to draw all of its life force from you. Unless you think it's empathetic, it's not. And it will keep, I tried to explain to somebody. It says, why does this keep happening to me? And I told him that the Yetzer Hara, lahavdil, is like a sports team. For instance, in football, you have a running play. You have an isolation run. You give it to the running back. And you see, you do the simple running play, and my offensive line is stronger than your defensive line, and I gain 5 yards. How many yards do you need for a first down? You need 10. So on second down, I got 5 yards in the first time. I'm going to try it again. Why? It's a low risk play. It's effective. It's the least chance for something bad happening. And I'm going to get another 5 yards. What happens? I run that same play again. 2nd and 5. I run the ball. All of a sudden, I get a first down. Great. I get a new set of downs. I do it again. I'm going to run the play again. 5 yards again. Do it again. 5 yards again. Question is, when is he going to do something different? The answer is when you can stop him. And until you can, he's going to keep running the same play. Same too with your Yetzer Hara. As long as he knows what your vulnerability is and that you are not either willing or desiring or brave enough to confront a different answer to that problem than you have previous to. You're not willing to hear a new piece of information. You're not willing to live with that because it's too difficult for you, or you think that it's too difficult for you. He's going to keep running that same play over and over and over again. Unless you think, okay, maybe a few times. I promise you, he ran the same play on me for almost 30 years. And it's not 5 yards in football. It's psychological hell. It's not a joke. And therefore, immediately when you wake up from your sleep, you must wash your hands. Because your ability to get out of the situation that he does not run the same play again is you take your hands, meaning your Emunah, and you wash them in water, meaning the pure waters of Da'at, of the Tzaddik. I'm going to go learn the Torah of Rabbi Nachman, Badafka specifically when I'm struggling. And in that way, I'm doing it instantaneously after the struggle. And through that, I'm going to lift my hands back up, because what's going to happen to me when I go through the difficulty, my main inclination is I'm going to want to reinforce the belief in nature as soon as I start suffering. This is the victim mindset, which is killing us, because we go into nature immediately. We go into despair immediately. So Rav Natan says, don't do that. Open up your Likutey Moharan as soon as you start to feel that your da'at goes away. Because if you do it immediately, it's like right when you wake up from your sleep, you put your hands in the water. Because by doing that, you remove the vulnerability. You remove the leech that is the Sitra Achra, that he wants to take all the life force from your beliefs, because that's where he gets his chiyut from. And instead of you falling into the trap of this is teva, that you see Rabbeinu Sha'ag B'Kol Gadol, Ein Shum Yerush Ba'olam Klal, and all of a sudden you get whipped back into your senses and you go, okay, this is not pleasant. This is very, very, very difficult. I'm in a lot of pain right now, but at least I know it's from Hashem. And I know now that my answer is not to go find the best doctor in Yelp, but to go to the best field and to scream to Hashem. And I'm already in a better situation. I'm already closer to Yeshua than I was 1 second ago. Bezrat Hashem, we're going to continue tomorrow. Anybody have any questions from today's lesson? You can either write them on the bottom, you can ask them out loud. If anybody's still watching and listening, and I wasn't talking to myself for the past hour.
Rabbeinu?
Yes.
So about like having Emunah is just not only about having Emunah is not only to believe that whatever Hashem does is for the best, like you have to scream and cry out to him.
Yes, it's talking to him, Rabbi Nachman says.
That's what
beautiful. Beautiful, David. That's Hibodedut.
Yeah, I texted it.
Very good. That's the Chiddush of Rabbi Nachman. Emunah is Hibodedut. That Emunah is not just a belief in Hashem. Obviously, that's a part of it. But that itself is not going to be the tikkun for sleeping. The tikkun for sleeping is going to have to be high level, high octane Emunah. That means
you have to
I'm
cry
talking to Hashem. You got it. Exactly. Very good.
That's called Hibodedut.
Yes. Beautiful. Okay, anybody else?
Sorry, did he just say you have to cry out to Hashem? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah, he did. That's part of Hibodah usually. I didn't know that. That the crying out is only after you first are besimcha, okay? Because if you do it the opposite way, you go more into yeyush, you go more into despair. You have to, that's why it's so important that you constantly are learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Because you have to understand that life, as we know, is very nuanced. And there's very different seasons and times. And you need to respond different times, different things. Rabbi Nachman says you need to have this very fine line between gratitude and surrender and crying and begging. And you need to make sure that the crying and begging comes after the gratitude and surrender. Why? Because if you just cry and beg, so then what's going to happen to you is something that's not unlike what you've already experienced for most of your life. You go deeper into the sadness or depression. Like many people, including myself, and even emails that I've received, conversations that I had of people who had practiced Hibodah for years and saw that in the beginning, it wasn't having the effect that they read about, that they learned about, that they saw other people were having. And the reason is because it brought them deeper into despair, because the only way to cry effectively is to first realize and recognize that Hashem is in your life, that He really is there. And now I can cry not from sadness, but from a broken heart. And these are two completely different things. One of them, Rabbi Nachman says in Sichot Turan, comes spiritually from the spleen. The other one comes from the heart. And how do you know which one's which? That Rabbi Nachman says, after you're done crying, are you happy? If you're besimcha after the tears, that means it's a broken heart. If you're sad after the crying, you're in a worse place. That means it's coming from the spleen. It's coming from depression. It's coming from the sitra achra.
1,500 people.
Okay, thank you. I've actually experienced something like that, but I'm just going through something, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, that was
Sure.
great advice for me. Thank you.
Great. Yes, I had to deal with that for many years. And like many people, the Rebbe is not here to tell us. And the majority of the students of Rabbi Nachman, they live in Israel. So where are we getting our information from is a very limited supply. And maybe you don't even connect to the people who are giving it over. So it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of really, a lot of self-sacrifice and a lot of getting up and falling down. But, this is one of the reasons why I felt so strong about making Tzion, is because I really do in my heart, and I'm not just saying this, I believe that Rabbi Nachman has the key to Geula in every way. But his path is intense. His path is very nuanced. His path is multifaceted. And for a person who doesn't have the right advice, he doesn't have the right support, he doesn't have the right understanding of how to apply what into when, there's a lot of bumps in the road to get to actual wholeness with the teachings. Because they're like ash, they're like fire. So the fire can literally destroy all the negativity in your life. Or if they're not given the right way, it can bring you, unfortunately, sometimes into a darker place. And therefore, this is one of the reasons why we felt it was so important to make the organization, was that I could hopefully give over my experiences in the few years that I had been doing it, so to speak, on my own.
That's what I'm saying.
And try to take away at least whatever I can, those bumps in the road that we don't have to go through. And that simply we can just get good advice, hopefully, and to be able to live with it as soon as possible. Any other questions? Okay. Everybody have an amazing day. This is sure to be an aliyah for the neshama of my rabbi, whose yard site is today 1 year. Rav Aaron Walken Ben Esther. His neshama should have a big aliyah. But he's the main reason, beside Rabbi Nachman, that I'm doing this right now, for sure. And I'm very, very thankful for everything that he taught me. And I hope that I'm making him proud. And this one's for you. So have an amazing day. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to be back together tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Bezrat Hashem, and tomorrow night, Likutey. Everybody have a great day.